In this video, I'm going to review the fermentation kit value pack, show you how to use things, and also how to make sauerkraut. I have 28 grams of shredded cabbage here, and I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of, and this I found is what's recommended the most on sites for making sauerkraut, is the Himalayan pink salt, and I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of that to the 28 grams. I'm using 28 grams because that's the size that will fit into the quart jar. Right, these lids also fit on a half a gallon jar, right, and often I make it in that as well. I'm just making a smaller batch here, and what I'll do is just sprinkle the salt here and then actually just start to massage it. And what's going to happen is that the salt will pull out the brine, and I'll just usually do this just for a couple minutes, and then I'll let it stand for maybe 10 or 15 minutes and come back to it and do it more, and the brine should have been pulled out. So I'm going to pause the video. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes and I have been massaging it a little bit. I'm going to continue for a bit. Now it is possible just to leave it up to an hour and let the salt do most of the work just by itself, but if I kind of squeeze it, it just speeds up the process, and slowly the brine will start to come out. Alright, you can see it a little bit down here at the bottom, but it would still need a few more minutes of squeezing it like such. So I'm going to pause again. Okay, it's been about 10 more minutes and I have been squeezing and massaging the cabbage, and you should be able to see some of the brine here. Now this is going to be a small batch, so this is about what the brine will look like, or the amount. Now the fresher the cabbage is, the more brine you'll get. Right. But next then I'll take this, and again I'm going to just make a small batch. The small batches don't take as long to ferment as well. So I'm just going to be putting the cabbage into the jar. Now as I do this, you usually want to pack it down inside the jar as well. So I do have, you can use, you could use several different things, but I actually purchased this. That way I can push it down and pack it and continue. Now things are going to expand, so most of the directions will say to leave about 4 inches of headroom. Right, for this smaller quart I usually don't leave quite 4 inches, but I do when I'm using the half gallon here. I want to make sure the brine gets in, so I'll make sure I pour all of that in, and usually it's pretty close to when I measure out the 28 grams of cabbage. I like that because it matches then with exactly 1 tablespoon of salt, and you can see how when I push the cabbage down, you can see how much brine is there. So I think I can probably scrape out the rest of this and put that in as well. Okay, I have taken time to make sure that all of the little cabbage pieces are down under the brine here. And before I chopped up the cabbage, I removed some of the larger outer pieces of the cabbage leaf because I'm going to be using that to basically press down and to keep the little pieces of cabbage from floating up. The saying is, under the brine everything's fine. I'll probably put another piece here. Alright, and pushing it down, and you should be able to see, or I'll show at least up closer, there's quite a bit of brine here. So all of the loose cabbage is under the liquid brine, and this is where now I'm going to be using the products, all right, that I'm reviewing. All right, this weight will go in, and it takes up room, and now, not sure if we can see it, now there's a lot of brine. The brine is almost up to the top. All right, it's going to expand, and the brine is going to actually, when it's this high, I may want to remove a little bit, but usually I just leave it on because that's where these caps, work, in that if I tighten this up, and I'm going to set on here, I'm going to show you it before I take it off here. This has, and it only has it only has one of these sliders. Some will come with two where you can put the month as well, but if today is the 13th, I can move this so I know that I started this on the 13th. A little bit. And tighten it up. Right, and then I'll set this. The best temperatures, they say, are close to 70. All right, anything cooler, it'll take a little bit longer. Anything hotter than that, then the fermentation process can go fast, and they say sometimes too fast for it. But what these lids will do is that as this expands and the brine goes up, extra brine will come out the top, and the lid keeps oxygen from coming back in, right? And that prevents bad bacteria from growing, and the good bacteria, or the probiotics, all right, which grow in in a atmosphere with no air. So what's nice about this is that it keeps air from going in, and yet the extra brine and the carbon dioxide, I think it's carbon dioxide, whatever gas is given off, is able to exit. Now, the reason for the pump here is that if I would, after a couple weeks, take this off, right, and wanted to taste it, I'm just going to bring the camera up a little bit more. If I wanted to taste it to see, if it was done, if it was at the, the sourness that I like. If it's not, I can close everything back up. But basically then the pump here is so that you could put it on and pump out the oxygen, the extra oxygen that got in because you opened it. So from my use of this, and from what I've read too, is that this is only used if you open it up and then close it back up to get rid of the oxygen. I've only been making sauerkraut for the last 2 months, right? But in the research, and what I found also by actually doing it, is that this size, the quart size, needs to sit anywhere from, you can stop it at 1 week, or I tend to let it go 3 or 4 weeks with this smaller size, and then the larger half-gallon size, I'll have it go maybe 4 or 5 weeks or even longer. Here's another lid. I like these lids as well because they actually, you have the month and the date, and it comes in handy if you're going to be having things ferment for a long time. Now, what will happen over the course of the next couple days is that the brine is going to increase, and it will actually probably flow out the top because it is so high in the jar right now. So that's why I usually will put it in a dish or some other container so that the brine will overflow and come down and it's contained. Right. After maybe a week or so, then the brine does start to go back down, all right, lower. But even if some of the leaves cabbage leaves would stick up a little bit above the brine after a couple weeks, from everything I've read and from, again, my own experience, is that it's okay because there is no oxygen in the jar where the bad bacteria can thrive. But what you want to make sure is that, I would say, and you could research this on the internet as well, but my understanding is that for at least the first week or so, you want, under the brine, everything is fine. So it's important that the brine covers everything. The kit does come with a book that goes over the basics. All right, things to watch out for and what to do. And it actually has a sauerkraut recipe, here as well. And it's very, very similar. And their suggestion, again, the half-gallon jar with it and a medium head of cabbage. Again, I tend to weigh out the cabbage because I know for 28 grams that 1 tablespoon is a good size for that. All right, but the book does provide you with some directions as well.